statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. It was a Euro-American trade in slaves by which 12.5 million Africans were captured from their indigenous homelands and transported via the Atlantic to Europe and the Americas. The transatlantic slave, also known as triangular trade, was the worst form of man's inhumanity to man and the most costly in human life of all long-distance global migrations. Hundreds of Africans chained tightly to plank beds in the belly of slave ships in horrific conditions were transported via the Atlantic and stripped of all human dignity on arrival in Europe and America. It is the greatest crime the Caucasians committed against the black race. It is impossible to discuss the transatlantic slave trade without a copious reference to impoverishment and underdevelopment of Africa and its peoples. The triangular trade left the continent. Western Spring Television, ours it is.
Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Africa. Wherever in the world you are viewing us from, here we go again. Good morning to you, if it is morning, because I know most definitely for those of our amazing viewers watching us from Australia, it's like good afternoon, almost good afternoon to you out there at this moment in time. So wherever in the world you are viewing us from, say good day. Thank you for being here with us. This is Morning Spring, your daily tonic, which runs from Mondays through Friday, and meets so many other programs that we reel out from Western Spring Television, the station that says it as it is. It is definitely the duo of me, my very humble self, and the irresistible. Okay, no, they can just be one irresistible, no doubt about it. Today, though, is my name at Irresistible TD on Twitter. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Spring. Femi, good morning to you as well.
Today.
Yes, ma'am.
Good to be here again. And good morning, Nigeria. Morning, world, from wherever you're viewing us from, listening to us from, watching us from. We greet you. It's good morning. Very serene atmosphere this morning. Quite calm and cool here. And so we welcome you on today's program, Morning Springs on Western Springs Television here in Nigeria. My name is Femi Ojo, and on this program, just like my colleague has said, we say it as it is.
Definitely.
The station, say it as it is. No, in a local parlance, no mago-mago.
No mago-mago.
We discuss these issues, and we look at very critical issues.
Absolutely.
Here on the program. You know, policies, governance, and the well-being of the people. We speak to policy and public opinion makers and holders. Definitely, that's what we do here on this program. And definitely in our nation, there will always be something to really talk about. Either, you know, good things or not too good things that we do prefer conversation for, so that these things get better. And our people, the Nigerian people, we always get the best of what the government, the people in the place of leadership, you know, have to offer. And of course, making them good followers and people themselves. And that's part of what inform the conversation. And talking about Nigeria, the ladies will be playing this morning.
Yeah, I think 8:30 Nigerian time.
In just a little over an hour from now, they'll be trading tackles with
the
Lionesses of England. Let's tell you, perhaps you are seeing us, or your handlers are seeing us. We are rooting for you, girls.
No doubt.
Go all the way, do your best, and of course, you can be sure of our support. You know, when it comes to sports, when it comes to especially football, that's the time you see Nigerians come together.
It's a unifying sport. It is,
really. No tribe, no language, no religion. Everybody comes together. In fact, I remember when we were younger, and then, the cable thing is not really
in existence.
Wasn't everywhere then. And then you can count, it's not every house that even has the television at that time. So whenever there is, the Super Eagles are playing, all this Man U, Arsenal thing wasn't that big. Yeah. So when the Super Eagles are playing, and all you have to do, and possibly you don't have the facility in your house, all you have to do is just be monitoring houses. The moment you hear noise from the house, or you just get into the house off your shoe, by the way, then you get to enter. You don't even have to know who owns that house.
Absolutely.
You see everybody come together, and if it happens that the Eagles win, then you see the joy on everybody's faces. Maybe after the match, people might now revert to the status
solemn.
Then it's a unifying factor.
Very unifying.
So, girls,
best of luck, and definitely wish the Super Falcons the very best of luck against our colonial masters. Look, go show them. Plantre, Oshuala, all of you, all the very best from here, and will keep us updated during our sports show as well. And definitely it promises to be exciting on the show this morning. As always, we'll definitely say it as it is. So we'll check out some of the headlines making the rounds from the various papers that we have with us and for you this morning. And most definitely we want to look critically into what's been happening in Niger Republic, our very close door neighbor. It's not been good, not too good. It's not been good there. The world is saying no to coup d'etat. The military regime by now should go rest and let democracy thrive. But it's been a topsy-turvy. It's been mixed reactions. Some people are excited for the facts of the facts that the President Bazoum has been ousted, while the international community have been saying, hey, there's no room for that. And going by what ECOWAS, the 7-day ultimatum given the junta to relinquish power, but it lapsed yesterday. And
so many persons are thinking, what next now?
What next? In the course of this program, we will be joining somebody all the way from Niger Republic this morning to give us an up-to-speed as to what exactly is happening in that country right now. The custom controller of customs over the weekend, in the course of last week's weekend, he was at the various borders bordering Nigeria and Niger, and they were all closed for now. And I saw something that Niger, the junta itself, has clamped down on airspace, no flight in, no flight out, because
I think the ECOWAS even said the same thing. Like for their member countries, they should not allow these things to happen. But then, just like we usually say, it's about the people. Now, the big elephants are already fighting, and so the grass most likely will tend to suffer for these issues. Democracy and the democratically elected leader of President Bazoum on one side, for whatever their inadequacies are, for whatever allegations people might have that might have alleged against them now, the military has come to power, and that happened with the palace guard. It wasn't even really with the real architecture of the military.
His own guards.
It was his own guards that held him hostage, and they've taken over power. But they seem to be getting some support, especially from nations that are being militarily led as well. Burkina Faso, Mali, and the rest of them, especially in the ECOWAS sub-region. And that seems to be, possibly giving them the urge or the support that we can do this. And these nations have really been talking tough and say any military intervention in Niger they will deem it as an attack on them as well. Talking about Mali, talking about Burkina Faso. And so they will retaliate. They will do the same thing, the same measure of force.
Basically, for like 31 years, the bilateral relations between Burkina Faso and Russia have been terrible. But all of a sudden, it's they've come back because there's this backing by Russia.
Through the Wagner Group.
Through the Wagner Group for these countries, Burkina and all this. And it sheds more light as to why some of these Western nations are really, really against what President Vladimir Putin of Russia is doing to Ukraine at this moment in time. So I really wish there could be peace all over the world. And this, if anything, erupts here. That's why I really give kudos to the National Assembly, the Senate, for not approving military intervention in Burkina Faso through the Nigerian army, ECHO and stuff like that. Because, look, so many people will suffer. Deaths will come up, and it's diseases, disasters, destruction will erupt in this nation. And Nigeria being a country where our borders, our land borders are porous. Everybody they tend to find their way in here. We're still looking at what it looks like here. So it's really, really not too good, right? But we'll be discussing this in the course of the program much more. But let's take a short break. When we return, let's take you on a jolly ride with the headlines that we have with us. Please stay with us.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever expounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Funmilayo Ransome Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments against colonial policy of taxation as it affected the Nigerian women. Bere, as fondly addressed by her women followers, Funmilayo championed the initiation of universal adult suffrage, which gave an unprecedented leeway for women to contest elective offices and power to exercise voting rights. Married to a foremost educationist and teacher, Israel Oladotun Ransome Kuti, the first president of Nigeria Union of Teachers, Funmilayo Ransome Kuti was the mother of children who inherited her spirit of activism. Olufela and Be Kololari, the former, a renowned musical legend. She was the first female student of Abeokuta Grammar School and the first female to own and drive a car in Nigeria. The award recipient of Member of Order of Nigeria MON and Lenin Peace Prize, was born on 25th October 1900 and was killed on 13th April 1978 by rampaging road soldiers in Lagos. Western Spring Television identifies Funmilayo Ransome Kuti as a watershed character in history. Hilas Olayinka Herbert Macaulay, politician, nationalist and journalist, was the first Nigerian to qualify as a civil engineer, surveyor and architect. Born on November 14, 1864, Herbert Macaulay was the founder of Nigeria's National Democratic Party, the first political party in pre-independent Nigeria. Scholars of Nigeria's political history describe Herbert Macaulay as the intellectual bulldog of 19th century Nigerian nationalist movement, in a deference to his qualities as founder and leader of two foremost political parties, Nigeria National Democratic Party (NNDP) and National Council of Nigerian Citizens (NCNC). His matchless versatility in party organization and control kept the British colonialists on their toes in the entire span of his active life. After his death on 7th May 1946, Herbert Macaulay remains a hero of his country, which recognized his anti-colonial struggles. Today, Nigeria's 10 naira coin bears his oval face and trademark moustache. Western Spring Television identifies Herbert Macaulay as a major character in history. Kiriji War, also known as Ekiti-Parapa War, was waged among Yoruba main ethnic groups which emerged from the ruins of the falling Oyo Empire that were desperate to replace the awesome powers hitherto wielded by the Alaafin of Oyo. The Kiriji War is defined as a conflict of confederacy and unitary political system championed by Yorubas of different socio-economic and political interests. The Ibadan military aristocrats felt they deserved a dominant position for saving Yoruba land from being totally submerged by the Fulanis by their victory in Osogbo War of 1840 and
All right, thank you most sincerely, our directors right here. Let's quickly get down to the business of the morning, this beautiful Monday morning, 7th day in the month of August 2023. Quite a whole lot of papers we've got. I will kick things off gradually from the pages of the Punch newspaper. Punch newspaper has the big bold headline there. Foreign airlines repatriate over $4 billion in 15 months. $4 billion in 15 months. The writers there says Lagos London fares 49% higher than Accra London, and that's about then 162% higher than Cotonou to London. I would rather probably just prefer to stay in Nigeria for now. Nigeria Air project stalls. Airfares skyrocket over foreign exchange shortage. Anybody traveling abroad at this moment in time probably has good money to go. And on the top strip of the same daily, bank shareholders protest as directors borrow 113 billion naira. Bank shareholders protest as directors borrow 113 billion naira. Wow. For what? But then, influx of smuggled textiles killed 150 local companies. That's credited to the TEA. Wow, that's really amazing there. Let's go to Niger a little bit here. Niger, ECOWAS leaders meet as 7-day ultimatum ends. And on the bottom strip of that same daily, the Punch newspaper, private schools will suspend bus services, raise fees. That's credited to NAPS. We're all anticipating that. Next term, it's just going to be grace. And suspected land grabbers shoot 3 in Ogun community invasion. Last but not the least, on the same daily, the Punch newspaper, elevator tragedy. Lagos sacks facility managers, suspends agency GM. Now you are talking. Somebody must bear the brunt for all these things.
Then to lead to
at least. Yeah. So we can prevent other future occurrences. Yeah. That's it. That will be all from the Punch newspaper. Femi?
Of course, we go to The Guardian. This morning, The Guardian, and with the bold caption, Nigeria may incur over 2.98 trillion naira, double defense spending yearly. Nigeria. I mean, over 2.98 trillion naira, double defense spending yearly. And of course, you have the picture of, you know, the Niger situation there, with
the
President
sanctions.
Tinubu on one side, the coup plotters on the other side. Definitely sanctions against Niger. You have pictures of tanks and you know, PMCs there, and some statistics there, figures, by the way. That beneath it, you have a subsidy. How repair of refineries may ease economic pains. We wait to see. Okay, and on ease, over 14 years blackout, power cut in Ondo South.
Wow.
You know, the day I heard this, that there's some part of that state that have been in blackout for years.
14 years.
You then wonder, what has happened to, you know, the leadership, the traditional leadership, the political leadership? Do you mean for 14 years, that's like almost 3 election cycles, politicians have been coming to that place to canvass for your vote, and they have been getting it. And you people have been in total blackout.
They're members of the Senate, from the senatorial district, from members of the rep. So, oh God.
So what has happened?
This is really, really tough.
It will be an interesting read. Possibly the reasons are there. Now, India-bound couple excrete 184 wraps of cocaine.
Oh my goodness.
So when you hear excrete,
oh my goodness,
that's not the excrete you think. This has to do with substance, illegal substance.
Goodness.
For 184 wraps of cocaine in Lagos. And of course, still on the Guardian for this morning, at the top strip, you have Lagos CP, NAPS police, FRSA LASMA officers at extortion point. I think probability should be returned to where it should really be returned now. You know, in a manner of speaking of the former head of state. Lagos CP, NAPS police, FRSA LASMA officers at extortion joint. This looks like an interesting combination. Police, FRSC, LASMA officers, extortion joint, and I think the situation will be probed and investigated well, because many persons, when they hear this kind of a thing, you just see them pessimistic about it.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, you've done this. Is it just for the photo ops? Is it just for the media? You go all the way and do more, especially interrogate this situation further. Who are they answerable to? Because sometimes you hear people say these junior officers are not really the culprits. They have people that they give return. Quote unquote return.
Exactly.
So that should really be investigated. And I think that's all there is about the Guardian for this morning.
Just look at some of the other headlines that, because virtually all of them carry the same headline, but was stated differently. Let me go straight to Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper, the big bold caption there says, Niger coup is adamant as deadline ends. And the riders there, civilian joins security forces for surveillance. ECOWAS mom over next line of action. Niger troops deny Nigerian soldiers access to Boso. Tight security in Jibia, Ilela, Megatari borders, and Tinubu meets Sokoto, Kebbi, Katsina, Jigawa, Yobe governors. Wow. And coming further down a little bit, female soldier kills captain in Adamawa. Wow. Wow. What could have happened? You need to read that story and get the full details. Just as it was stated, Indian-bound couple excrete 184 wraps of cocaine. Man discovers his wife of 15 years had two husbands for 7 had second husband for 7 years. Man discovers his wife of 15 years had second husband for seven years.
Wonders really shall never end.
I really don't want to dwell on that, but I'll move on here. 141 local governments at high risk of diphtheria. That's credited to the federal government speaking there. On the top strip of the same Daily Trust newspaper, FG paid 36 billion naira for electricity subsidy in 3 months. That's credited to NEC. And doctor strike. NMA cautions federal government on no work, no pay. Best time for Kwankwaso to decamp is now that I am in charge. That's credit to Ganduje. Oh my goodness. Can you believe that?
Of course.
Okay, that's one story I'm really interested in, and I will try as much as possible monitor proceedings. Will these two powerful men from Kano State, will they ever be able to come back and do the needful?
You never know.
Politics could be.
When it comes to politics, it's an interesting thing. 1 hour, 20 minutes, it can be a very long time.
Wow.
Especially as this is concerned, as much it's about the common interest, just like they say. But the thing is, don't be caught in their words. That's the way it works. Okay, moving on quickly, just to touch on The Nation newspaper for this morning. Okay, it says federal government, states open talks on minimum wage review on The Nation. Federal government, state open talks on minimum wage review with a rider. No plan for 100% pay rise. Okay. And just, in the middle there, in red, you have IDOWU Group, Southeast Ministerial nominees, best. Okay. Federal government plans technical hubs in 7 state. Okay, just above it you have foreign reserves, return to growth, how to stop multinationals exit, and on the Niger situation, ECOWAS AU leaders meet over Adamant Niger junta. And at the top strip there, the situation in Edo State between the governor and the deputy governor. Why Obaseki won't sack Shuaibu, won't back Shuaibu as successor by aid, while Obaseki won't back Shuaibu as successor by aid. And just beside it, you have telcos reject government's demand for license to load diesel. Wow, telcos are the telecommunications company. Yeah. So they want to be sharing their, diesel, the products by themselves. So that,
everybody's trying to cut costs and
that's a cost
at least
measure. Yeah, but it seems
the federal government is not giving into that.
There is a demand on them. That for you to be able to do this, you must do this and this. I think that's what the telcos are reacting to. And finally, on The Nation for today, student doctor's death, Lagos sacks official. Makinde unfolds or your economic recovery plan. That's all on The Nation for today. The front page. Yep.
And I think as about now, one of our guests seem to be ready. I'm trying to get confirmation from from one of our guests. He is a security consultant, and we'll be talking to Mr. DEYEMI SAKA, who is a security consultant from Lagos, who will be talking to us as to some of the crises, what could happen, and how we can actually get to know the broader line when it comes to what is happening in Niger Republic amid security issues that it poses for Nigeria, right? So we'll take a short break at this moment in time. When we come back, we'll get down to the business of the morning proper. Good morning.
The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38th parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Western Spring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history. Samuel Ladoke Akintola was a frontal figure in the historical moves that birthed an independent Nigeria from colonial Britain. As a freedom activist, he deployed his wits, energy, intellect and oratory skills to prepare the grounds for constitutional talks that eventually culminated in the country's independence in 1960. The 13th Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò of Yoruba land cut his teeth as a politician when he became a foundation member of Action Group, the dominant political party in the Western region, and was elected the party's parliamentary leader of opposition at the Federal House of Representatives. The crisis in the Action Group, which pitched Samuel Ladoke Akintola against his leader, was not only a sore point in his colorful political life, but a reversal of gains which characterized the exemplary leadership of Awolowo Akintola premiership. 23 years after his death, Oyo State University of Technology Ogbomosho was renamed Samuel Ladoke Akintola University of Technology to keep his memory alive. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ladoke Akintola as a major character in history. Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kwan.
You're welcome back. It's still Morning Springs on Western Spring Television, and right about now we delve into the conversation, especially as it has to do with the situation in Niger Republic. Different dimensions, different outlooks and interests appear to be on in the mix, in the power play of what is happening. It's no more news that President Bazoum has been ousted by the junta, but then what is the situation now? The next line of action, ECOWAS gave a 7-day ultimatum to the junta to really leave, pack their load, but they are not having it. So as it stands today, yesterday, the 7-day ultimatum lapsed, and then the people are wondering what is going to happen. The border nations are, interested in the matter, and Nigeria happens to be a direct neighbor to Niger Republic. So this morning we get to speak with two important guests today. And firstly, we'll be having an independent intelligence analyst, public affairs commentator as well, Mr. DEYEMI SAKA. Mr. SAKA, good morning.
Yeah, before we bring in Mr. DEYEMI, 1 second, Femi, please. Sincere apologies. There is this almost 1 minute video we will reel out, just show you very shortly before we bring Mr. Independent intelligence analyst, communicator into the mix this morning. Let's show you what happened in Niger Republic, while some were hailing that aspect of the ousting of the president in Niger Republic. Let's take it from there. Right. That was a moment where the military, some of the military guards came out to show support for the junta that after they ousted the president of Niger Republic at that moment in time. Now this calls for a mixed reaction. Look at the stadium was filled to capacity. It seemed there's excitement. Some people probably tend to feel, yeah, they don't want Bazoum. Yeah. But let's just get some insight as to what does this mean at this moment in time, because look, it's a two-way thing. The supporters of Mr. President, the ousted President Bazoum, have not really been vociferous. They've not come out to really talk quite a whole lot, but you've seen some others coming out to show support for the military, for the junta that actually overthrew the Bazoum. But I now begin to wonder, probably this set of people are kind of like tired of the leadership of Bazoum, that they wanted this. But I think why ECOWAS probably will be feeling bad, and the international community is now, they don't want a military regime to come into play.
Which appears to be spreading around the region.
Yeah. The neighbors there, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea-Bissau, these are countries whereby they are being led by military juntas, and ever since they took over, we've not seen anything the ECOWAS had been able to do before now. I will really say probably this happening to Niger is the first time, if my memory will play me right, that the ECOWAS will really stand up to say no to this, but
beyond press statements.
Beyond press statement that we've always had before now. And looking at it at this moment in time, the deadline they've actually given, it's elapsed.
Yes, it is.
And as much as people like us, journalists, the media, we're not calling for war, militarization, force. Let's see what could be done. I think it was something last week we said it on this program that it was real from the papers that former head of state Abdul Salami, the Sultan of Sokoto, were sent by Mr. President to Niger, which they said they didn't allow them enter the country and what have you. But the way it's going, I think dialogue is the best. The junta itself should, at this moment in time, dialogue. Why have you taken this man out? What are the reasons? What is it that you want? Things can be sorted out. Dialogue can come into play at this moment. But when it comes to the aspect whereby force has to be used, you stated that earlier while we'll introduce the program. When two elephants fight, the grass will definitely suffer. The citizens will suffer. There will be casualties, there will be deaths, there will be destruction, and just like what's happening around Sudan, Darfur region, Khartoum, all that area now. Look at the Tigray. Look, anyone who has actually experienced what war looks like will never pray for war to erupt a little bit in any society.
And speaking about negotiation and having a roundtable discussion with the junta, and possibly they are not having it or backing as a fact that the negotiation that you have, if it actually has to do with democratically elected persons, are different to the ones you have with many uniforms. I'm not sure they are trained to understand this kind of conversation, in as much they went all the way to seize power. So in as much there was a motive why they had to go all the way, which could have gone wrong for them. Because if actually the coup failed, in law, as we know, any coup plotter, except you are forgiven, you are meant to be exterminated.
Absolutely.
Because that's the result. Any coup plotter is as good as you want to bring out the people that are there, and then to have you and your people been there. Now it was successful in a manner of speaking for them. So I'm not sure it's going to be a one-way kind of conversation.
Absolutely.
Now, there have been delegations, just as I talked about, General Abdusalami Abubakar retired, the Sultan of Sokoto, they are leading a litigation on behalf of the federal government to intervene on this matter, maybe from the traditional, cultural end, to have religious or cultural perspective to that. Because when you talk about Niger, you're talking about a nation that some see it as an extension of Nigeria, in a manner of speaking, because we speak some languages together. Hausa is being spoken in Niger. Fufude is being spoken in Niger. So we have some kind, and Fulani as well, a kind of similarity in the matter of tradition, in the matter of language. And so I believe possibly that's why that delegation was raised. There is another delegation being led by the former Secretary to the Government of Federation, Babagana Kingibe, to speak with the government of Algeria and one other nation, you know, possibly to show their support and to speak up on the matter, because there are some nations that are just on the fence. There are some nations that are spoken up. There are some nations that are spoken against and for. So these are the matter. Now, the question is, it's looking more like there will be military intervention. As a nation, can we afford this? You can't talk about military intervention based on ECOWAS contingent without talking about Nigeria. Nigeria is in the middle of all this as the big brother for some of these nations that are there. Now, do we have the military to go through all that? Are we not having overstretch? These are some of the conversations that we'll be having with our guests.
All right, our guest is live via Zoom this morning, and we'd like to welcome say good morning to Mr. DEYEMI SAKA. If you're there, good morning to you, Mr. DEYEMI SAKA, please.
Good morning.
Okay.
One of the things that remind you that you're a Nigerian. I am from Nigeria, you know, network of each and each, but it's nice to be back home.
So we'll get it right. It's definitely going to be right one of these days, God willing.
Nigeria will survive.
Thank you, Mr. DEYEMI.
Yeah, definitely we will. Thank you for joining us, Mr. DEYEMI. He is an independent intelligence consultant. He's a man mixed up with quite a whole lot of activities and.
All right,
good to have you. Let's move on now.
Mr. DEYEMI, you know, the situation in Niger seems to be getting awkwardly interesting by the day. The military guys took over, the palace guard, and then President Bazoum was ousted. At the point, people are wondering, where's the president? Can't you let him go? The ECOWAS are speaking up on the matter, talking tough. We've been hearing the idea of military intervention, the Nigerian perspective to this. So let me ask you, what do you make of this situation?
I had a conversation with a good friend of mine yesterday, who happens to be one of you guys, or Darren, and we talked at length about this. And I've shared my thoughts on this issue as well on Facebook. It's an interesting time for us in this country, and I want people to see it from this perspective, or this from this angle. I think we have 3-4 countries bordering Nigeria. We have Niger, we have Chad, we have Cameroon, and Benin Republic. 2 of those countries are now under military rule. Chad has been under military rule since forever. Niger just fell a couple of days or weeks ago. What does that tell you? To some of us that have been, you know, kind of independent in this analysis, we probably want to tell you that trans, as much as you want to accuse it of accuse the nation of being responsible for the wave of crises in Africa, especially the sub-Saharan Africa, it's also a country that's been losing grip on its former colonies in Africa. That is why if you take a look at former colonies of French in Africa, you hardly find one that is in a stable condition. Why? One of the reasons of analysis will point to that is probably France trying to embark on the colonization through influencing. This I'm not trying to ignite a diplomatic route, but it's just my allegation out there, igniting, you know, instability across this region. But there's a new sheriff in town. yes, there's Russia through Wagner Group, and there's China. And whether we like it or not, these two couples are in bed together when it comes to their foreign policies. Africa as a continent, or probably the rest of the Western world as a bloc, economic bloc, did not, pay attention or probably imagine the BRICS nation was going to be an emerging threat, and that was what gave China and Russia, deeper, footing or strong footing in Africa. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And with that, it's been ongoing, and there's a move for an expansion of the BRICS nations away from the founding members. That is there. We saw what happened in Mali. We saw what happened now in Niger. But if I was and this is also an indictment of the National Security Advisor. So some of us celebrated it, that yes, it's a departure from the norm and the tradition. They have to be former military personnel for you to, take up that role. But now this is the National Security Advisor, his advisor or advising his principal. Because any right thinking NSA should tell Mr. President that we are sitting on a keg of gunpowder, and it's not going to be raised against time. They're forced to, because whether we like it or not, the next theater is going to be Cameroon. And Cameroon is the most buoyant, the most resourceful of the colonies of France in Africa as we speak, taking away North Africa, but in West African sub-region. And it's not just Cameroon. Nigeria is also a prize, it's also a target. And now it's going to be a case of who goes to Cameroon to back up the coupies there, because whether we like it or not, all the templates, all the reasons why the military interventions happened in Mali, in Niger, is also evident and present in Cameroon. There's massive corruption. There's a long rule of Bobia that's been there since I was even before, almost maybe some years after I was born. There's corruption, there's high poverty rates, high illiteracy, mismanagement of the country resources, and there's also insecurity, and division and ethnic divides, and the ethnic tension is done. Warring ethnic nationalities, the English versus the French-speaking parts in the northern parts of Cameroon, and another part of Cameroon also combating or facing Boko Haram. So now, I think it's going to be a case of who goes there, who gets there first. And for me, I probably would say France trying to install a favorable military junta in Cameroon. And one that, I'm not saying it should, but probably that's what's going to happen. And if that happens, you should now look at the two countries that will fall in quick succession, Benin Republic and Togo. If Benin Republic and Togo should fall in quick succession, this is just my analysis. That means the two biggest democracy in West Africa has been threatened. That is Ghana and Nigeria. Nigeria is going to be boxed in a ring, because now we have Chad, Niger, maybe Cameroon, and maybe Benin Republic bordering us under military rule. And I understand the predicaments of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Whether we like it or not, we don't have to paint it in bright colors. It needs the appeal, it needs the endorsement, it needs the working relationship of the Western nation. And the only way he could do that for them is to, transit to being a Democrat, protecting or preserving democracy in West Africa. So that's why he wants to go in. But now let's look at it. We have there about a rough estimate of 250,000 personnel across forces. That means we're saying Nigerian Army, Navy, Air Force, we have 250,000 personnel. At some point, some of us felt it was 130, 150,000, but with new recruitment, let's play that 250,000. We have a lot of, theaters going on. There's the insurgency in Northeast. There's insurgency in Northwest. I will not follow the escalation of by the former administration calling it banditry. It's still insurgency in Northwest. You have that. You probably want to fulfill your role as a big brother in ECOWAS, want to send 10,000 troops to Niger Republic. You might probably want to say it's a country you can overrun in 3-4 hours. You're wrong, because you probably want to get there. But then you're stepping foot on Nigerian soil, you are going to be facing a Nigerian army back with Wagner force and some Chinese special forces. And you send 20,000 fighting troops to Niger Republic, and they probably incur a casualty, and probably they lose like 18,000 men. You could be rest assured that there's something called post-traumatic stress disorder that probably going to tell on those guys, and even on their commanding officers and the commanding officers at the DHQ. What happens is you're also risking a military intervention in Coup as well, because the guys will probably tell their nose why you're sending us to death.
All right, Mr. DEYEMI, let's look at this crisis, and let's tag it a little bit to Nigeria. Niger is just like opening the door from here, and you be able to go in when you move around Sokoto, Maiduguri, that closeness, the borders that we share. But looking at what is happening out there, and the challenges being faced with Nigeria's borders, before the influx of people from that area into this country, security-wise, we all know what we have been battling with in our dear nation, Nigeria. Security-wise, to checkmate the influx of people who will come in from that area into this nation again, what does this portend?
Well, I think we need to be sincere with ourselves, and maybe this is one of the things that probably will bring, will be strong argument for restructuring. I don't know how they want to go about this, because I remember somebody, a former member of House of Reps, I don't know if he was re-elected, when they were talking about shutting off the border, says the distance from the bedroom of Mr. President in Dara to the Niger Republic is 17 to 25 kilometers. So I don't know what is shutting down. And I have a friend that's gone to Kano that'll tell you that in Kano, the days that they want to, the markets are open, you see people walking in from Niger. So it's unless we want to lie to ourselves, the border is so porous. I don't even think there's a border there. It's a seamless, integration of communities. Muhammadu Buhari, as a former president, while he was in office, said he has cousins in Niger. So that's to tell you how things are. And it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. It's also peculiar to Kenya, Uganda. We have a member of parliament in Uganda having cousins and relatives in Kenya. It's like that. So what we probably going to say that the best way to handle this is probably look at the bigger picture of these things. The coupists in Niger, I've told you, if anybody is smart enough, they probably would have known that these guys are open to negotiation. Because if they're not open to negotiation, it wouldn't have been a palace in the first instance. They would have just killed everybody, going God blazing. But they helped the guys to tell them, fine, this is what we want. They've given, and if anybody is smart enough, will know that these guys are willing and open to power sharing. But I don't know why the NSA is not saying this and telling his principal that this is what these guys are telling us with how they've executed the coup. And whether we like it or not, Russia went into Ukraine, imagine under 14 days, 20 days, probably is going to be the record of the Gulf War, bringing about the bravest war in the history of mankind. Gulf War was just for 20 hours. Operation Desert Storm. Maybe was imagining this was going to be maybe some 6 hours, but now we're facing Russia and Ukraine war for over a year. And the sanctions and what have is hitting Russia so bad. So Russia needs to look for other means to make more money. China needs to make more money too. And China needs the land in Africa. China needs to outsource its population. My choice of words and my imagination too, because the booming and the large population in China cannot stay in China. China is also a country that faces massive, natural disaster. So looking at Africa might just be a colonization of Africa, just like what they did for us in the First and Second World War. Mussolini deformately brought the world to Africa. They were looking at Africa as a farmland for the world. And also where to get raw materials and what have you. This is that's what's in the playbook of Putin and the other man in China. So, and I say this, COVID couldn't get China what they felt they were going to imagine. They're going to get people dropping there and they'll come with their population to come as aid workers and what have you, and they occupy the land. So now that they can't do that, they just need to set up Chinatowns across 10, 15 African nations, and that does a massive, depletion of, the burden on the resources in their country. So China, who has also always been in bed with Russia, always okay, let's look at Africa. Russia needs to make more money, whether you like it or the uranium enrichments in Niger. It's not about you giving. It's just that Africa, we're probably going to be giving a better slave deal. Nobody's going to treat us or bring us to the table to be equal partners. And whatever Russia is doing is because Russia wants to increase its nuclear armaments against the rest of the world. Same with China.
All right.
And they know that no matter even if you're in a khaki or a barbaric girl in the blazers or what have you, an average African leader is obsessed with photo ops with foreign nations. He's obsessed with that, acceptability from acceptance from foreign nations. So they know what they're doing. They know, let us give these people a better deal, better than where those guys are coming from. By the end of the day, it might end up being worse than what we are rejecting, or what we are all thinking. I say this to people, except China, but not even except China. Hong Kong and Taiwan and probably even the Philippines are bearing the brunt from Chinese oppression.
Absolutely.
Well, so Russia. Apologies to my and maybe a bit of education to my northern friends who are Muslims. Oman lost its heritage because of Russia invasion. Russia backed civil what have you, and that's what brought about the crisis in Russia. So for me, I think we need to accept the fact that we should move away from this thing and look at the interest of Africa as a nation. All right. Not thinking that these guys are protecting us and these guys are not going to protect us.
All right, Mr. DEYEMI, in this conversation, there is no denial again to the fact that there is a global dimension to these. Foreign interest, you've mentioned France, mentioned China, Russia, the Wagner Group, who announced yesterday that, yes, we are now here. They announced that they are really there in Niger right now. But, some will say, for the colonial master, I'm talking about Niger now, France, that most nations that were colonized by France, France don't tend to answer off completely in their matter. We want to talk about Senegal, Ivory Coast, Niger now. We are talking about Mauritania, Benin Republic, some of those nations that even after those nations are independent on their own, France don't get to answer off. And in fact, there is a kind of arrangement that it looks like some of these nations get to pay back something, either in cash or in kind. And this is part of what this military junta, the one in Burkina Faso, now the one in Niger, have been saying and say we can't, as a people, talking about Africans, be regarded as an addendum, as an annex of these big nations, talking about France, that we must emancipate ourselves, using their words now. And possibly that's why these coups are happening, especially the one in Niger right now. So do you think the coup in Niger is an emancipation kind of drive from, delivering, if I may use that word, Niger and some of these nations from the grasp of the colonial masters?
No, I don't say it that way. It's just you leaving one leader, one slave master going to the other. Yes, it seems like that. That's the perception you're probably gonna view it from. That's the perception it's generating across the continent. But whether we like it or not, African leaders have done great disservice to Africans than their colonial masters. You probably want to talk about insecurity in Africa. You've seen African leaders packing themselves on the jungle, sitting down in Paris, talking about insecurity in Africa. Does it make sense? And I think the Western world, with what is happening in Niger, with what has happened in Niger, Mali, Libya, and what have you. Yes, Libya, because at some point when Libya was under Gaddafi, we saw the kind of massive developments that occurred, and now in the democracy, we've seen how much of a failed state it is. So I think it's now time for the Western world to just tell themselves, I think democracy is not working for these guys in Africa. And rather than yes, they will keep making these stories. Okay, let me give you another instance.
All right.
Since 1990, we've been having elections in this country. And since whenever we've been having elections across the continent, EU monitoring whatever group, whatever country will condemn the conduct of the elections. But the same governments of these nations will still be will still recognize those governments that has been found out of that corrupt or probably flawed electoral process. Do business with them, recognize them. They will do another election, they'll do another election cycle. The same thing will be done. They will condemn and they'll still do business with them. So I don't see you thinking, and from my own instinct, from what we've read, I'm not even going to be surprised. I think when a lot of people are putting, I don't think America put out of Niger. That is if they don't have an embassy or still what, because if they don't have an embassy, I don't think there are special forces to be able to come and carry out a rescue mission some 2 years ago. So that means they are still in business with these guys.
All right.
So why are we losing sleep over things? It's between, you know, you've been between the devil and the other devil. You don't know what route to go for. You probably want to step into Niger to show that you're a Democrat, but at the same time, you don't step into it, you're in trouble because you're exposing yourself to danger. You step into it and you're escalating the danger you're facing as a nation as well. It's a lose-lose for Nigeria. It's not a win-win for us. We step in, we get their attention. We don't step in, we still get their attention, because whether we like it or not, in the last 72 hours, the focus of Wagner Group, China, France, UK, whatever is on Cameroon. They probably want to tell you, so it's route to get to Cameroon first.
All right.
And if Cameroon will fall,
Wow.
interesting things ahead.
So DEYEMI, this will, because I know Lagos is it's a Monday morning, so we want to allow you to get down to business. But lastly here, what is the way forward for ECOWAS? What should they do at this point in time?
I think it's time for ECOWAS to just sit down, first look inward and tell themselves the bitter truth. The political class or the ruling class or the bunch of Democrats, so-called Democrats in ECOWAS sub-region, should tell themselves the truth that it's not a do or die affair when it comes to elections. The electoral process should that is be transparent and, you know, be acceptable to the outcome. Should be what you know that the people would embrace. Let's face it. If a similar things happen in Nigeria, what happens? Do you think? You look at it. All you need to do is just have people good governance, put yourself forward in a fair contest, and move on. If you lose, accept it. If you win, or probably be responsible when you get into office. Away from that, take it. I'm not getting specific with the Niger issue. The guys, any smart person know the guys have told you that they are willing to negotiate. They are open to power sharing. It's not time to talk. It's time to send their brother to them. Same for president. The leader of the head of the envoy should not be Abdul Salam Abubakar. The head of the envoy should be President Muhammadu Buhari. The last ties in Niger. I don't know what the NSA is doing. Let him go and talk to his brothers. It's obvious that these guys are open to power sharing, because I keep saying it. If they're not open to power sharing, if they're not reasonable, if they're not rational, they would have killed the former president. They are holding him as a bait to negotiate. It's obvious. It's not just about wearing white cap and calling yourself NSA. These are things you should probably tell your principal with the NIA and get things done. You don't need drag us into a needless war.
Yeah.
You send 10,000, 15,000, 10,000. The least you can send as foreign contingent is 10,000. You send them to Niger, they get bloody, killed, slaughtered, and murdered. And you think the Nigerians, they won't be mutiny across the country?
Mr. Saka,
they should put their thinking caps on and think.
Yeah, just before you go, if you can answer this in 15 seconds, because we really have to go and let you go as well. That means you're saying military intervention by ECOWAS country is not an option for now. Is that what you're saying?
Military intervention by ECOWAS nation is baseless, is nonsensical, and quite imbecilic.
All right, thank you. Those are strong words.
Very well. We'd like to thank you most sincerely for taking time out to be with us on the show this morning, and we'll definitely keep our fingers crossed. We'll see what happens, and probably we'll send you to Aso Rock. I think they need...
We don't need a bottle of wine.
All right.
No, we hope they won't fall.
We just hope they won't fall. Honestly, definitely...
junters across the region, because that doesn't speak well for us.
Absolutely. Yeah,
thank you, Mr.
But don't worry, when you are in town, or when we are in town, you can be rest assured that is 100%. Thank you so much, Mr. SAKA. Do have yourself a great day.
All
right, the program is still Morning Spring right here from Western Spring Television. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll continue with the show. Please stay with us.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white supremacists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Aminatu, the legendary Queen of Zazzau, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazzau. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazzau. The 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazzau by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of her army and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the Queen of Zazzau, as a brave, smart and talented leader, whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. It was a Euro-American trade in slaves by which 12.5 million Africans were captured from their indigenous homelands and transported via the Atlantic to Europe and the Americas. The transatlantic slave, also known as triangular trade, was the worst form of man's inhumanity to man and the most costly in human life of all long-distance global migrations. Hundreds of Africans chained tightly to plank beds in the belly of slave ships in horrific conditions were transported via the Atlantic and stripped of all human dignity on arrival in Europe and America. It is the greatest crime the Caucasians committed against the black race. It is impossible to discuss the transatlantic slave trade without a copious reference to impoverishment and underdevelopment of Africa and its peoples. The triangular trade left the continent in ruins. Western Spring Television identifies transatlantic slave trade as a watershed event in history.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West, and Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around you. Yup, we've got you covered because your girls got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join me, Chocolate Cassie, on Eccentric as we take you into every bit of the juiciest news, fashion, music, movie updates, and other trending conversations. Together on the show, we'll get personal with your favorite celebrities via phone call, Zoom, or even live here in the studio. Eccentric will be shown on your TV screen on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Here are 5 amazing fun facts I bet you never knew about Christianity.
Number 1, there are over 2.4 billion Christians worldwide.
Amazing fun fact number 2. The Bible is one of the best-selling books of all time, with more than 100 million copies sold every year.
Most Christians believe in heaven and hell.
The Bible is the most translated book in the world, with more than 3,000 languages.
Amazing fun fact number 5. Most Christians throw science out of the window without realizing that most scientists are Christians. Hello, I am Pastor Steve Akinwumi.
And I am Dr. Adeoye Oyewole.
Join us as we highlight and discuss day-to-day issues pertaining to the day-to-day living of every Christian.
Issues in Christendom shows every Sunday on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Evelyn Ohiole,
Hi.
King Eve. How are you today?
I'm good, I'm fine, I'm alive.
I really feel like she's not giving the right answer to the question. When one asks you, how are you? And you said, you're saying, I'm alive. It's very annoying, seriously. How are you? I'm fine. I feel I'm fine will be the right answer instead of I'm alive. Not that I asked you if you're dead before.
Go and check all these 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, everybody, they are extraordinarily sexually active.
I feel is being unnecessarily hyper when it comes to the issue of sex, because we talk about other topics and he feels so reserved. He really doesn't have anything much to say when it comes to other stuff. But when it's the issue of sex, I believe he's being unnecessarily hyper. That's when I have to pick an issue with him. I mean, it's just being unnecessarily there when we're talking about sex. Just like a child, his mom just got him his favorite chocolate or ice cream, very happy, doing as though if he doesn't have sex for a day, he's going to die.
When it comes to finance, women also support their husbands financially. You need me emotionally. You need me spiritually.
Cassie is an amazing person, but I hate the too much attachment to that gender. I need you spiritually, I need you mentally. I can get these things anywhere with money. If you go by the topic was, who does marriage favors the most? You know how many jobless women they marry every Saturday? They are saying it favors you, favor. Are they vague so?
Growing up, when I was in the world, we've heard of
Who are you now?
Well, MC Too Much said, he likes saying when I was in the world.
Thank you for being there. Morning Spring is still the program right here from Western Spring Television, the station that says it as it is. And we want to say thank you for being there. We have been analyzing what's actually going on in Niger Republic with our guests via Zoom this morning. And we want to thank, once again, thank Mr. DEYEMI SAKA for taking time out to be with us. Hopefully we're trying to connect again with somebody else who will help us out, who is in there to really express what is going down. And Femi is still with me here. But while we try to connect, Femi and I will just look at some of the stories making the rounds here. Looking at what DEYEMI SAKA stated, that what these coupists actually want is a share in power. And I look at that statement from Mr. DEYEMI SAKA that, wow, sharing power, civilian, military, there's always that thing there. The military, most especially, let me bring it back a little bit to Nigeria here. Okay. A couple of years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, here in our dear nation, Nigeria, even if you as a civilian, not a military person, you wear a camouflage jean, a short or something, and a military man sees you, you are in for it. Yeah. So, so now that democracy has come, it's stabilizing gradually in Nigeria. But with what is said, look, will that sharing of power, do you feel from your own perspective, do you feel it can work?
Well, you know, taking a cue from what Mr. DEYEMI SAKA said, you know, it was based on logic that if not that those guys, the military junta, want a share of the power, yes, the coup could have gone bloody. They could have just killed everybody. That's why they're still keeping, of state. Yeah. And the fact that they didn't do that, it was a palace coup. And they're still keeping the guy, possibly, that's President Bazoum, as a ground for negotiation. So just that maybe they are open to power sharing. Of course, we've seen such arrangement in Africa before. Some nations who possibly, where they're in power, okay, we take this, you do this, but then the military are always in the saddle of decision making, and then you just have a way of working with the civilians who they feel can work with them. And will be wary. People who they know that won't really pose any significant threat to them. So if actually that is what we have on our hands, and I'm speaking about, speaking as an African now, in Niger, then these negotiations and the negotiating table is the only place that that conversation can happen. Yeah. Of course, delegations being led by Sultan of Sokoto, Abubakar Saad, His Eminence, and definitely former military head of state Absalami Abubakar. In Niger, we have the Ambassador King Gibig side speaking with other nations, possibly to talk to have their influence exerted on the situation in Niger. And you know, very important is what DEYEMI said when he talked about he feels President Muhammadu Buhari will have come in handy because President Muhammadu Buhari, when he was in power, especially towards the twilight of his administration, speaks expressly to the fact that he has this thing for Niger. He has said that possibly, if you know, in a humorous way, if Nigerians will really not allow him to have his time, he could have just walk into Niger, suggesting that there is this affinity, this association that President Muhammadu Buhari has for Niger Republic, and which the feeling is mutual as well. The way the guys in Niger hold President Muhammadu Buhari in high esteem. In fact, there was this talk about the fact that the rail line that went to Maradi in Niger is because of President Muhammadu Buhari's openness to the development of Nigeria, but even at that, as that of Niger as well. That's why that rail line went through from Nigeria to Maradi. So, and I think that's quite logical as well. Having President Muhammadu Buhari, somebody that stands tall, that is being respected in Niger, possibly, and he used that word, let their own brother talk to them. Possibly it might have come in handy, but then we don't know if actually there were entreaties to President Muhammadu Buhari from the Nigerian government. If actually he's open to that as well, he's an old man, will he be willing to go all the way? But definitely we have our fingers crossed. But I think Mr. DEYEMI SAKA has raised a very valid
Seriously. And again, looking at some of the countries in Africa at this moment in time, whereby they are under military rulership, juntas and everything, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso, and Chad. Look at all these countries now. Gradually, two of the biggest powers, just as DEYEMI SAKA helped us out, two of the biggest amongst so many other nations in Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, on one side. But looking at Cameroon, between Chad and where they are at this moment in time, do you think the opportunity could arise that if all these countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Guinea-Bissau, won't infiltrate what is happening in their country into Cameroon? And looking at Cameroon and Nigeria, looking at the Bakassi, the borders Nigeria and Cameroon at this moment in time, do you foresee Cameroon falling?
If our producer can help us with the map of, the West African sub-region, on the map of Africa, you will see that trend. The coup that has happened, Niger, Chad, Mali, and then, we've talked about Ghana and Nigeria, and now Cameroon in the mix, having its own fair share of troubles, security-wise, the issue with the Anglophones and, the Francophones as well. That is an in-house thing. But then, apart from Cameroon, I think every other nation should be wary, because it's looking more like a pattern. Because if this thing is out, there is Nigerian adage, Yoruba adage that says, if your neighbor is eating bad things or bad insects or ants, and you're not really expressing your concern, when the challenge comes, all of you in that neighborhood might not be able to sleep.
Absolutely.
And in a matter of speaking now, that's a literal translation. And that is what is happening right now. There is a pattern. So if it goes to Cameroon, God forbid, so where's next? So, and I think that's why ECOWAS nations are standing up right now to say, this cannot continue. Because if they fold their hands, who knows what the motivating factors are for the coup that has happened?
Absolutely.
And successfully, those guys have been there. They have not left. Chad has been under military rule for a time. It has just happened in Niger. It is happening in Mali. Now you talk about Cameroon. I hope it won't happen to them. But then there is a palpable uprising that is still being courted, especially with the long years of the Paul Biya rule that has been there for ages. DEYEMI SAKA said, this is a man that has been there for God knows when, for decades and decades, which speaks to the leadership recruitment process in African nations. Sometimes it appears, what's wrong with our leaders? Can't you just have your time and, have a policy, a process that brings in another set of leaders, not really rulers, because most of what we've had in Africa are predominantly rulers.
Absolutely.
Either in khaki or in civilian, barbaric, or what have you. And, there is this thing about people who come in the name of being disruptors, who come as freedom fighters, in which they come at a point trying to set the people free, and then before you know what's happening, they become exactly the same thing that they fought themselves. So talking about Cameroon, we hope we don't get to that, because if it gets to Cameroon, so where's next? You want to talk about Ghana, you want to talk about Nigeria, the foreign interests are there. Some nations have been mentioned over and over, the China, Russia, the Wagner group, definitely from Russia. They have established themselves. They issued a statement yesterday and say, we are now in Niger with their PMCs, very deadly kind of ammunitions that they have, having, possibly training the Nigerian army as well in the middle of all this. So I think that speaks to the fact that ECOWAS leaders are talking tough now. They have not really been firm as this before when it happens to those other countries. But now that it is spreading, and when you see that trajectory, you see that this is a pattern. Who is behind all these things? What is the motive? Is there a calculated attempt to, take over the West African sub-region through these military interventions? this military uprising and the junta that we have. But we hope these things will work so that we can have our nations back. And finally, you know, on this matter, is if these things go ahead, Nigerians will be in trouble. And I tell
absolutely.
you, wait, share neighbors with them.
Yeah.
If there is military intervention and we have something like real, you know, the one Nigerians call face me, I face you, real kind of war situation happening, people will scamper for safety. The pressure will be on our borders. You want to talk about Kebbi State. You want to talk about Sokoto State. And you are talking about these, you know, part of the country where poverty is really an issue. Yes, every part of the nation has its own challenges, but we are talking about states. Talking about Sokoto State with very high statistics of poor people. Now, when you have the influx of people from Niger, what becomes of those
you know, that was why I actually, because Nigeria is a country where our borders are not
well guarded. That's the truth.
For instance, I look at during the regime of former U.S. president who is now standing trial, Donald Trump, building down a wall between Texas, Mexico, and you know how it is. And looking at that border, I don't know how anybody, some people have tried it, they've been shot and they've been arrested, what have you. That border is well manned compared to what we have here. Because we've said it quite often on this program and more subsequent programs as well, that the influx of all these people from Niger, if anything erupts at this moment in time, with the borders not totally good, with the spate at which...
Not good at all.
No, not good at all. With the spate of banditry, the spate of kidnapping,
that's it,
coming into this in this country that we have at this moment in time, and looking at this set of people, nobody to check them, no database to ascertain, okay, this person, you're going to be staying with Mr. Suzo or this relative or this, nothing to show for it. In fact, what does this portend?
Before you
security-wise,
further, the fact that if these things happen, if push comes to shove now, and these people besiege our nation and they keep coming, those guys that are running for their lives, hungry, angry, frail, definitely confused, they could be taken advantage of by these bad elements. All they have to do is come in, we take care of you, and then after some time, they're
recruited into...
because they have no choice. They don't have a country to go back to. And then they are telling them, those evil guys might be telling them, the kidnappers, the bandits, the terrorists might be telling them, don't go there, just stay with us. And you are talking about people that share almost the same language together. So there won't be a language barrier thing. All they have to do is just to entice them, come work for us, and then the situation degenerates totally. And we are not talking about borders that are just... you know, just few meters. There are some of these, states that share as you know, as huge as kilometers of borderline with these nations. Ilela in Sokoto is an example. Kebbi State, there is a place called Kamba. I've been close to that before in Bunza, in Kebbi State. They share direct borders. In fact, people just take their bike and you know, and go into Kamba and they do business right there. So these are some of the things that we have on our hands. What will become the state of the situation for the state government? Now we are talking about some state governors who are not really even standing up, generally speaking now. So do they have the fund? Then we have a humanitarian crisis on our hands.
Absolutely.
Can we afford it? We have our own troubles as a nation.
And we don't need
our own challenge. The resident authors are on strike.
Yes.
The kidnappers, bandits, they are still wreaking havoc in some part of the country. You know, the NLC thing is there, and I think this is not the best of time for anybody to be a leader of Nigeria, especially for President Tinubu. But one thing he has said is the fact that don't pity me. I asked for this job, and Mr. President, be rest assured, we are not going to pity you.
No doubt.
Because you have said this is your lifetime ambition to become a president, and finally you are a president. So you must do everything. And as the leader now, he's the chairman of ECOWAS. Definitely. The buck stops and he's stable.
He has work to do.
The military intervention is being rumored. Will it be? Although DEYEMI has said that would be a very bad attempt at settling the situation in Niger Republic. So The buck stops at your table, Mr. Chairman.
We wish him the very best. And that will be all at this moment in time. We sincerely apologize. Technical issues from the side of our guest who couldn't connect with us here. But hopefully we'll be back. What is happening in Niger, it's a trend. We just hope things will settle and we will get into it properly. But before we go, Nigeria versus England, they started. Final score, your prediction? Let me put you on the hospital.
As a Nigerian, I wish them all the best. I really wish those ladies would go all the way. At least to break that jinx of second round and possibly get to the semi-finals. But it will be a huge task. But trust me, my name is FEMI and I'm a Nigerian, you know, and I'm supporting you. And I'm sure the whole of Western Spring Television, we are supporting them as well. We wish you all the best. Arsenal won against City yesterday. Many persons never saw it coming. You know? So many Arsenal fans in the studio, they're already jubilating. So who knows? Miracles happen.
Oh, okay. The miracles have started with us now.
Well,
all right. May next year, we will know where we're going.
That sounds like a shade. That sounds like a shade.
And, okay, just like my director is telling us that Sweden defeating USA.
US.
Really? I know most of us didn't see that coming.
That's why it's
that's for football.
Can happen, and it is not over.
Until it is over. And definitely at about this time, we wish the Nigerian girls the very best. Please go all out and do the needful. At least bring down a little bit of tension that is.
Let's have something to chat about.
Yeah, you know they do. We'll be back again tomorrow on another edition of this program. I want to thank the entire transmission team, our director, our producers, the entire camera team. You guys are awesome. Thank you for making it happen. You can join us on all our social media handles. We are live on Facebook, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. Tunde IDOWU is my name.
I want to sincerely thank you for joining us today. The Niger situation, we are speaking about it because we are direct neighbors and we want the best for our country and, of course, for the ECOWAS sub-region and Africa as well. Let peace reign. Do enjoy the best of your day. God bless Nigeria. Femi Ojo is my name. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye.